Have you ever noticed that quiet, heavy sigh you let out the moment you finally sit down at the end of a long, exhausting day? It is the sigh of someone who has been holding everything together for everyone else while leaving themselves completely behind. We walk through our lives carrying an invisible weight, a quiet collection of old expectations, silent struggles, and the constant pressure to perform. Before we begin diving into how we unpack this weight, I want you to take a brief, gentle moment right now to pause. Let your shoulders drop. Loosen your jaw. If you are ready to commit to your own healing today, leave an affirmation in the comments below, simply writing, "I am choosing to show up for myself." Let that be your first step. Let it be a quiet promise between you and the person you are trying to become. So often, we carry this weight without even realizing how much it is bending our spine. Think about those moments when you are driving home in absolute silence, completely forgetting to turn on the music because the noise inside your own mind is already too loud. Think about adjusting your rear-view mirror, catching a brief glimpse of your own eyes, and realizing you look so incredibly tired. Not just sleepy, but tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. Or think about those times when you are on the phone, gently reassuring a friend, putting on your warmest, most stable voice to tell them everything will be okay, while your own hands are slightly trembling from your own hidden stress. We over-prepare for simple conversations, rehearsing every single word in our heads before we speak, just to ensure we do not disappoint anyone, make a mistake, or cause tension. We swallow our own opinions, minimize our own hurt, and say it is fine when it is absolutely not fine. We do all of this because we have learned that keeping the peace around us is more important than keeping the peace within us. We often treat ourselves like machines that just need to keep running. We focus so much on adjusting our outward schedules, organizing our calendars, and changing our productivity systems, yet we ignore the deep internal friction. We think if we can just manage our time better, if we can just be more efficient, we will finally feel at peace. But the true burden is not the external to-do list. The true burden is the harsh, relentless voice inside that tells us our worth is entirely tied to how much we can handle without breaking. It is the voice that whispers that if we rest, we are failing. We hold our breath when we walk into a room, keeping our bodies tense and guarded, ready to react to whatever demand is thrown at us next. This is a heavy, lonely way to live. Loving yourself in a way that heals means looking at that internal friction and recognizing that you cannot run away from your own presence. It means realizing that you deserve the same grace, the same soft understanding, and the same fierce protection that you have been so freely giving away to everyone else. It starts right here, in the quiet, by acknowledging the weight you carry and choosing, piece by piece, to finally lay it down. Think back to a time when you made a small, harmless mistake recently. Perhaps you spilled a glass of water across a table, watching the liquid rush toward the edge, and felt your heart instantly leap into your throat, as if you had just caused an absolute disaster. Or maybe you received a text message from someone you care about that was just a tiny bit shorter or flatter than usual. Maybe just a single dry word. And you instantly felt a cold wave of dread wash over you, assuming they were secretly angry with you, or that you had somehow ruined the relationship. Maybe you slightly burned a meal you spent an hour preparing, and instead of just laughing it off, you felt an overwhelming, heavy sense of defeat, wishing you could just disappear. In that exact fraction of a second, what was the very first thought that crossed your mind? For most of us, it is an immediate, internal scolding. We call ourselves foolish. We roll our eyes in disgust, or we internally groove a path of frustration that feels all too familiar. The hot prickle of shame, the sudden tightness in your chest, the quiet urge to shrink, or the impulse to apologize a dozen times for something that requires no apology at all. These are not overreactions. That intense, immediate reaction is rarely about the spilled water, the short text, or the burnt meal. It is an echo from long ago. Inside each of us, there is a version of who we used to be that is still waiting for the other shoe to drop. That reactive, sensitive part of you is what we refer to as the inner child. It is not a separate physical person, but rather the repository of every single moment you felt small, invisible, misunderstood, or fundamentally inadequate. When you were young, maybe you learned that to be loved and safe, you had to be perfect. Maybe you learned that when you made a mistake, the warmth in the room suddenly vanished, replaced by a cold, heavy silence, or a sharp, disappointed voice. And so, you adapted. You learned to constantly watch the expressions of the people around you, trying to predict their moods so you could keep yourself safe. Now, years later, that same kid is still running the show when things go wrong. When you drop something, or when someone's tone shifts, that terrified little version of you instantly wakes up in a panic. They are convinced that the silence means they are going to be abandoned all over again. The noted psychologist Carl Jung once pointed out that we cannot heal what we do not first acknowledge. He wrote, "In all chaos, there is a homos. In all misfortune, a covert adumbration of order." When we look closely at our sudden emotional storms, we can start to see that they are not random acts of self-sabotage. There is an order to them. They are actually a cry for safety from a part of us that has been left out in the cold for far too long. Imagine how different it would feel if, the next time that cold wave of panic hits you, you didn't join in on the scolding. What if, instead of agreeing with that harsh inner voice that says you are foolish, you paused? What if you took a slow breath and looked inward at that shaking, terrified part of yourself and spoke to it the way you would speak to a frightened child? You would never yell at a child for spilling water. You would never tell a crying child that they are a failure because they made a mess. You would kneel down, look them in the eyes, and tell them it is okay, that it was just an accident, and that you are right there to help them clean it up. Recognizing your inner child means learning to notice when they are speaking to you through your panic. It is the moment you stop seeing your sudden anxiety as a flaw to be cured and start seeing it as a little hand reaching out for comfort. They do not need your anger or your frustration. They have had enough of that to last a lifetime. What they need, more than anything, is to look up and finally see you, the adult you are today, standing there, ready to protect them, ready to listen, and ready to tell them that they are completely safe now. Have you ever looked at the layout of an old house and realized that the doors were placed in strange positions, or that a hallway was built unusually narrow just to work around an obstacle that was removed decades ago? Our minds are structured in a very similar way. Our early lives serve as the blueprints for how we interact with the world, how we protect ourselves, and how we love today. When we are growing up, we do not get to choose the emotional terrain we are handed. We simply do our best to build a home on it. We look at the behavior of the adults around us. We feel the unspoken rules of our households, and we silently construct walls, doors, and escape routes just to feel secure. Think about the quiet patterns you live by today. Perhaps you are the kind of person who instantly tenses up the moment you hear someone's footsteps approaching your room, even when you are in a completely safe, loving environment. Perhaps you find yourself constantly over-explaining your decisions, giving a long list of reasons for why you bought a certain item or why you need to sleep in, as if you are permanently standing trial before an invisible judge. Or maybe you are the friend who is always the peacekeeper, the one who swallows their own feelings during a disagreement, because deep down, you believe that if you show your anger, the people you love will pack their bags and leave. These reactions are not random. They are the structural pillars of an old survival system. If you grew up in a home where love felt conditional on your achievement, you likely became an adult who cannot rest without feeling immense guilt. You sit on the couch on a Sunday afternoon, trying to watch a movie, but a persistent voice in the back of your mind insists that you should be doing something productive. If you felt that you had to be the emotional caretaker for the adults around you, you probably find yourself overextending in your current relationships today. You learn to read the room like a map, watching the microscopic shift in someone's forehead, or the subtle change in the way they put down a glass, immediately asking yourself, how can I fix this? What did I do wrong? We carry these sensory blueprints into our workplaces, our friendships, and our marriages. We walk on eggshells that we laid down ourselves years ago, forgetting that the ground beneath us has changed. We assume this is just who we are. We tell ourselves we are naturally anxious, or that we are just naturally quiet. But there is a profound difference between who you are and the defenses you had to build to survive. This realization can feel overwhelming, but it is actually where our freedom begins. The noted psychologist Carl Jung once observed, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To step into that privilege, we have to transition from being passive residents of this old house to becoming active architects. We have to stop looking at our old patterns with shame and start looking at them with a deep, quiet gratitude. Those walls were built out of love. They were built by a younger version of you who was doing the absolute best they could to keep you safe in a world that felt unpredictable. But you do not live in that old world anymore. The obstacles that required those narrow hallways and heavy, locked doors have long since vanished. Loving yourself in a way that heals means standing in the entryway of your own mind, looking at the blueprint of your reactions without judgment, and realizing that you have the power to remodel. You can gently knock down the walls of perfectionism. You can widen the doors of your heart to let people in without the constant fear of rejection. You can look at the child who built those defenses and say, "Thank you for protecting me. You did a beautiful job. But I am the adult now, and I can take it from here." When we talk about self-love in the modern world, we are often pointed toward superficial external fixes. We are told to go buy something new, to take a brief, expensive vacation, or to indulge in temporary comforts. But true, healing self-love is an internal shift, not an external acquisition. It is an act of deep, quiet, and unyielding compassion. It is the brave decision to shift your stance from being your own harshest prosecutor to becoming your own most supportive ally. Think about how you treat the people you love when they are suffering. Imagine a close friend coming to your house, utterly defeated and deeply distressed because they made a mistake at work. They are sitting on your couch, head in their hands, perhaps crying or shaking with anxiety. You would never stand over them and point your finger. You would never tell them they are a failure, that they always ruin everything, or that they should have known better. You would instantly soften. You would sit down right next to them, perhaps offer them a warm drink, and speak to them with the gentlest, most reassuring voice you possess. You would tell them that they are human, that this one mistake does not define their worth, and that you are going to help them get through it. Yet, when the door closes and you are left alone with your own thoughts, how do you speak to yourself? We hold ourselves to a standard of perfection that we would never dream of demanding from anyone else. We speak to ourselves in the mirror with a cold, cutting cruelty that would break our hearts if we heard someone say it to a child or a friend. Turning inward with compassion requires us to slow down our fast, defensive reactions. It means noticing when we are in pain and, for once, refusing to abandon ourselves in that pain. Think about those moments when you feel a familiar, heavy knot of anxiety tightening in your stomach after a difficult conversation, an awkward encounter, or an unexpected piece of criticism. Typically, our immediate instinct is to run away from that feeling. We try to numb it or distract ourselves. Instead of staying with the discomfort, we immediately start rearranging the items on our desk, browsing through a catalog, tidying up our digital files, or filling every quiet second with noise so we do not have to feel what is happening inside. Compassion is the willingness to stop running. It is the moment you choose to stay present with your own hurting heart. The next time that heavy, familiar ache rises in your chest, try to resist the urge to escape. Take a deep, slow breath. Place a gentle hand over your heart and stay with the discomfort. Breathe into it. Imagine speaking directly to that tight, aching space inside you. Acknowledge that you are hurting, and recognize that your pain deserves your kind attention, not your avoidance. Say to yourself, quietly, and with deep sincerity, I see that you are hurting right now. It is okay to feel this way. I am not going to leave you. This is not about fixing the feeling or making it disappear instantly. It is about letting yourself know that you are safe in your own presence. When you begin to offer yourself this soft, unconditional space, the cold armor of self-criticism begins to melt. You begin to realize that you do not have to earn your own kindness. You deserve your own love and protection simply because you are here, breathing, and doing the absolute best you can to navigate this life. Reparenting is the deliberate, patient practice of giving yourself today the emotional security, validation, and structural support you may have lacked when you were growing up. It is the profound recognition that while you cannot go back and rewrite your history, you are entirely responsible for the adult you are becoming. It is an act of deep reclamation. It means stepping into the role of the wise, nurturing, and fiercely protective guardian for your own vulnerable emotions. When old, painful memories surface, or when the current stresses of your adult life make you feel small, helpless, and completely overwhelmed, reparenting is the calm, steady voice that steps in to anchor you. To understand reparenting, we have to look at the moments where we feel most fragile. Think about a time when you felt completely left out, perhaps passed over for an opportunity, or realized you were excluded from a gathering of peers. In that moment, a cold, empty feeling settles deep in your chest. The adult in you knows, intellectually, that it is not the end of the world. But deep down, another part of you is crying, feeling the exact same sting of rejection you felt on the school playground decades ago. In those moments, we usually do one of two things. We either beat ourselves up for being so sensitive, or we look to the outside world to frantically reassure us, begging others to tell us we are wanted. Reparenting changes the entire game. It is the moment you stop looking outward for someone to save you, and you turn inward to save yourself. It is the practice of sitting with that cold, empty feeling, placing a hand on your chest, and saying to yourself, I know this hurts. I know you feel left out right now, but I want you, and I choose you. You are safe with me, and you will never be truly left behind as long as I am here. You become the mother, the father, the protector you always needed. You begin to offer yourself the consistent, unconditional love that does not depend on your performance, your appearance, or your usefulness to others. This process bridges the vast, aching gap between our intellectual understanding of our past and our emotional reality in the present. The psychologist Carl Jung beautifully captured this necessity when he stated, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Reparenting is the living, breathing embodiment of that choice. It is the daily, sometimes hourly, decision to stop demanding that the world fix your past wounds, and instead choosing to heal them yourself by offering your inner self a steady, reliable, and unconditional presence. It is the commitment to establish gentle structure for yourself when you want to spiral, to guide yourself to rest when you are burning out, and to offer yourself absolute forgiveness when you fall short. You begin to realize that the love you spent your entire life searching for in the validation of others, in the perfection of your work, and in the approval of the world, was actually inside you all along. By learning to parent yourself, you finally give that weary, waiting child inside the one thing they have been searching for, a true, safe home that can never be taken away. A crucial and often incredibly difficult aspect of reparenting is learning how to set boundaries, both with the people in our lives and with ourselves. For a very long time, you might have believed that saying yes to every single request was a sign of kindness, generosity, and love. You agreed to stay late for projects that were not yours to carry. You accepted invitations to social gatherings when your body was completely exhausted, and you allowed people to cross your emotional boundaries over and over again, just to keep the peace. But every single time you say an untruthful, resentful yes to someone else, you are saying a harsh, damaging no to your own well-being. Think about how it feels in your body when you agree to do something you simply do not have the energy for. There is a sudden, heavy, sinking feeling in your stomach. There is a tightness in your chest, a quiet resentment that starts to burn toward the person asking, and a deep, familiar disappointment in yourself for letting it happen again. We do this because we are terrified that if we say no, we will be seen as selfish, difficult, or unlovable. We are afraid that our worth in other people's eyes is entirely tied to our usefulness. We have learned to sacrifice our own comfort to keep everyone else comfortable. But establishing boundaries is not about building walls to keep the world out. It is about building a beautiful, safe home for your soul to rest in. It is the structural support of true self-love. It is the protective fence that allows your inner life to heal without constant disruption. It is the quiet, gentle declaration that your peace, your time, and your emotional energy are incredibly sacred, and that you have a deep responsibility to protect them. Setting boundaries with others looks like finding the courage to speak your truth with softness and absolute clarity. It looks like saying, "I would love to help you with this, but I do not have the capacity to give it my best today. It looks like telling someone, I love you, but I cannot be the person who holds this distress for you right now. So it is learning that you can love someone deeply from a distance without letting their chaos consume your inner peace. You do not need to over-explain your boundaries. You do not need to apologize for your limits. And you do not need to win anyone's permission to take care of yourself. Equally important, and perhaps even harder, is learning to set internal boundaries with yourself. This is where the practice of reparenting truly shines. It looks like knowing when to gently but firmly close your work for the evening, even when there is still more to do. It looks like catching your mind when it starts to endlessly spin and overthink a past conversation, and gently telling yourself, we are not going to dissect this tonight. We are letting this go. It looks like forcing yourself to rest, to sit in the quiet, or to step away from your screens, even when that loud, anxious voice inside is screaming that you haven't done enough to earn your peace. When you begin to set these boundaries, it will feel uncomfortable. It might even feel like you are doing something terribly wrong. But remind yourself that a boundary is not an act of rejection. It is an act of honesty. It is telling the people in your life and telling yourself exactly what you need to stay healthy, whole, and present. By protecting your energy, you are finally teaching the world and your own inner child that your life is worth defending. When you first begin to rewrite your internal dialogue and set those quiet, protective boundaries we just spoke about, something completely unexpected often happens. You do not feel an immediate, triumphant wave of peace. Instead, you are met with a cold, heavy wave of deep, unsettling discomfort. It can feel like a sudden, quiet panic. This is entirely normal, and it is perhaps the most misunderstood part of the entire healing journey. For decades, your body and your mind have associated your old, self-sacrificing habits with safety. Even though those habits were slowly draining the life out of you, they were familiar. They were the predictable ground you walked on. When you finally choose to step off that worn-out path and break those old habits, your mind flags your new, healthy choices as an immediate, terrifying danger. Think about what this actually looks like in your quiet, everyday moments. It is the evening you finally decide to stay home instead of going to a social gathering you had no energy for. You wanted rest, but as you sit on your couch, you do not feel relaxed. Your heart is beating a little too fast. You keep glancing at your phone, feeling a sickening knot of guilt in your stomach, convinced that everyone at that gathering is talking about your absence, or that you have permanently damaged those friendships. Or think about the moment you finally tell someone no to a favor they asked. You put your phone down, and your hands feel cold. You feel an almost overwhelming urge to pick it back up, type out a long, paragraph-long apology, and make up a complicated excuse just to soften the blow and make the rising anxiety go away. You might feel incredibly lonely when you stop overfunctioning in relationships, wondering if people only loved you for what you could do for them, rather than who you actually are. This discomfort can be so intense that it makes you want to turn back. You might find yourself thinking that maybe it was easier when you just said yes, or that maybe you were happier when you did not worry about your boundaries. But I want you to hold on to this truth with both hands. This discomfort is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is not a sign that you are selfish or that your boundaries are bad. It is clear, beautiful evidence that you are successfully breaking old, repetitive cycles. It is the feeling of your nervous system slowly learning how to exist in a completely new way. Healing is not the absence of discomfort. It is the courage to sit through the initial discomfort without reverting to our old, self-destructive coping mechanisms. It is the willingness to let ourselves feel the temporary sting of guilt so we do not have to carry the permanent weight of resentment. When that intense urge arises to apologize for a boundary you set, or when you feel tempted to slip back into your old people-pleasing tendencies just to ease the immediate tension in the air, I want you to pause. Take a slow, grounding breath. Remind yourself that growing pains are a natural, necessary part of structural emotional renovation. You are tearing down the fragile, drafty walls of your old life to build something that can actually shelter you. When your body starts to panic, it is just your inner child crying out because the new safety feels unfamiliar. Speak to yourself in those shaky moments. Tell yourself that this feels incredibly uncomfortable right now, but you are safe. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to protect your peace. You have spent a lifetime learning how to survive by abandoning yourself. It is going to take some time to learn how to survive by staying. Every time you sit with the discomfort of change, without running away, you are teaching your nervous system that you are strong enough to handle your own life. You are showing that little child inside that you will not sacrifice their well-being just to make someone else comfortable. The guilt will pass. The anxiety will eventually quiet down. And on the other side of that shaking, uncomfortable transition, you will find a quiet, unshakable freedom that you never knew was possible. We are all constantly narrating our own lives. From the moment we wake up in the morning to the second we close our eyes at night, we have a continuous commentary running in our minds. It is a quiet, persistent whisper about who we are, what we are capable of, what we deserve, and how the world sees us. If your early life was shaped by criticism, neglect, or the painful feeling of being misunderstood, that inner voice will naturally skew toward self-doubt and hypervigilance. It becomes a protective shield disguised as truth. You will see rejection in a friend's delayed response to a text message, assuming you must have said something wrong. You will see failure in a completely normal, natural learning curve, assuming you simply do not have what it takes. Reclaiming your inner narrative means waking up to this commentary and realizing that you do not have to believe everything you think. Think about the stories you tell yourself when you are feeling low. When a plan falls through, does your mind immediately tell you, "Nothing ever works out for me"? When someone gives you a genuine compliment, do you immediately brush it off, thinking, "They are just saying that to be nice. They don't really mean it"? Or when you try something new and struggle, do you whisper to yourself, "I am just a mess. I always ruin things"? These are not absolute truths. They are deeply worn grooves in your mind, old scripts that you have been reading from for so long that you have forgotten you are the one holding the pen. To change this narrative, we must first learn to notice it in real time, without anger or judgment. When you catch yourself spiraling into those heavy, critical thoughts, try to pause. Step back for just a moment and look at the thought. Ask yourself, is this thought actually true right now? Or is this just a very old habit of talking to myself with cruelty? When you catch that voice saying, "I am completely unlovable," stop and gently challenge the validity of that statement. You do not have to replace it with toxic, forced positivity. You do not have to pretend everything is perfect. Instead, replace it with a narrative grounded in real-life truth, soft reality, and self-compassion. Gently tell yourself, "I am navigating a difficult, heavy moment right now, and I am doing the best I can with what I know." When the voice says, "I always mess up," answer it back with, "I made a mistake, just like every other human being on this earth. But that mistake is something I did. It is not who I am." This shift in your narrative is not a small thing. It fundamentally changes the chemistry of your life. You are rewriting the emotional atmosphere you live in. You are showing that young, frightened part of you that the bully in your mind no longer has free rein. You are choosing to speak to yourself with the same warmth, the same deep respect, and the same quiet encouragement that you would offer to someone you love with all your heart. By changing the words you use to describe your journey to yourself, you begin to change how you experience every single day. You stop being a victim of your past, and you finally become the compassionate author of your future. Many of us spend our entire lives chasing an idealized, perfect version of ourselves. We think that if we can just become patient enough, successful enough, or emotionally unshakable enough, we will finally be worthy of love. We look at our flaws, our anxieties, and our past mistakes as errors that must be completely erased before we can truly begin our lives. But this endless chase for perfection is simply another mask for self-rejection. It keeps us trapped in an exhausting cycle of constant striving, where our current reality is always deemed insufficient. Healing requires us to abandon the illusion of perfection and embrace the quiet, messy reality of wholeness. It is incredibly easy to turn our healing journey into a new kind of perfectionism. We start reading books, listening to talks, and practicing mindfulness, but then we create a strict set of rules for how a healed person should act. We think that if we are truly healing, we should never raise our voice. We should never feel a sudden wave of chant on a beautiful afternoon, and we should never slip back into our old habits. Think about how this shows up in your everyday life. Perhaps you bought a beautiful notebook, intending to write down your deepest thoughts and track your emotional growth with perfect, neat handwriting. But then, on a day when you felt completely overwhelmed, you looked at those pristine, blank pages and felt too intimidated to write. You did not want to ruin the beautiful book with your messy, disorganized feelings, so you kept the book closed and kept the pain locked inside. Or think about a time when you promised yourself you would stay calm during a difficult family gathering. You did so well for hours, but then a certain comment was made, and you felt that familiar anger flare up, causing you to snap. Afterward, as you sat alone, did you feel a crushing sense of defeat? Did you tell yourself that all your hard work was for nothing, and that you are right back at square one? This is the trap of perfectionism. It demands that we split ourselves in half, loving only the parts of us that are calm, productive, and pleasant, while hiding the parts of us that are hurt, angry, or exhausted. But when we do this, we are performing the ultimate act of self-abandonment. We are telling our inner child that they are only allowed in the room when they are behaving perfectly. To break this cycle, we have to transition our perspective. We have to look at our lives not as a puzzle with missing pieces that need to be found, but as a complete tapestry that already contains dark threads alongside the light ones. The noted psychologist Carl Jung touched upon this profound truth when he wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why is complete acceptance so terrifying? Because we are afraid that if we accept our flaws, our anger, and our deep-seated fears, we will stay stuck in them forever. We worry that accepting our messy days means we are giving up on growing. But the beautiful paradox of healing is that we cannot change what we do not first tolerate. We cannot soothe a crying child by pretending they do not exist, and we cannot heal our hurting parts by wishing them away. True healing is found in that complete, terrifying acceptance. It is the realization that you do not need to be flawless to be loved. You simply need to be honest and present with your own experience. Wholeness means making space for all parts of who you are. It means holding your strengths and your achievements in one hand, and your unresolved fears, your messy days, and your moments of frustration in the other, and recognizing that both hands belong to you. It is the soft understanding that you can be a deeply loving person who still occasionally gets angry. You can be a strong, capable adult who still sometimes needs to cry and be held. You can be committed to your healing and still have days where the weight of the world feels like too much to carry. When we embrace wholeness, we stop trying to cure our humanity. We stop treating ourselves like a project that needs to be finished, and we start treating ourselves like a living, breathing human who is allowed to learn, stumble, and grow at their own pace. You are allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress, all at the exact same time. Loving yourself in a way that heals is not a straight line. It is not a destination that you reach, pack your bags, and leave behind. It is a continuous, lifelong practice. It is a commitment that you renew every single morning in the quiet spaces of your day, and especially in the moments when you feel most tested. There will be days when you handle stress with incredible grace and profound self-compassion. And there will be days when you fall back into old, reactionary patterns. When those difficult days happen, the test of your self-love is not how perfectly you stayed on track, but how gently and how quickly you bring yourself back. Think about how this journey actually unfolds in your real, everyday life. You might go weeks feeling like you have finally figured it all out. You are speaking kindly to yourself. You are setting your boundaries with ease, and you feel a light, warm peace in your chest. And then, out of nowhere, a small setback occurs. A plans change, a misunderstanding with a friend, or a stressful week at work. And suddenly, that cold, familiar anxiety is back. You find yourself pacing your living room, or sitting on the edge of your bed with your head in your hands, feeling that old, heavy disappointment washing over you. In those moments, the critical voice will try to whisper that you have failed, that all your progress was an illusion, and that you haven't actually healed at all. But that is the moment where the real work of self-love begins. It is the moment you look at your own frustration and say, I am not back at the beginning. I am just having a human day. And that is okay. We have to realize that healing is not about never feeling pain, anger, or fear again. It is about how we respond to ourselves when we do. When you fall back into an old pattern, when you say yes when you meant to say no, or when you let a harsh thought slip through, you do not need to punish yourself. The child inside you does not need a scolding guardian. They need a patient, steady guide who says, we stumbled, but we are still safe. Let's take a breath and try again. As you move forward from this moment, remember to treat yourself with the tender, unending patience you would extend to a loved one who is learning something completely new. You are relearning how to exist in your own life. You are untangling decades of survival habits, and that kind of deep, internal change takes time. It cannot be rushed, and it cannot be forced through criticism. Every single step you take toward self-compassion, no matter how small it may seem, matters. Every boundary you quietly maintain, every negative thought you catch and edit, and every single moment you choose validation over self-criticism rewrites your internal world. You are building a new relationship with yourself, one built on trust, safety, and unconditional love. There is no final exam you have to pass, and there is no perfect version of you waiting at the end of this road. There is only you, right here, right now, choosing to show up for yourself with an open heart. Trust the process. Embrace the beautiful, messy highs and lows of your journey. and continue to step forward, knowing that you are entirely worthy of the love you are so bravely learning to give yourself. Think about the journey we have just taken together. We started by looking at that heavy, quiet sigh at the end of a long day. And we traveled all the way through the blueprints of your past, the boundaries you are learning to build, and the beautiful reality of your wholeness. It is a lot to process. It is a lot to hold. If you are feeling a bit tender right now, let that be a sign of how deeply your heart is listening. You have spent so many years looking outward, searching for a guide, a protector, or a quiet voice to tell you that you are doing okay. You looked for it in the approval of others, in your achievements, and in the quiet relief of meeting everyone else's needs. But as we close this journey, I want you to look at your own hands, feel the steady rise and fall of your chest, and realize that the guide you have been searching for has been here all along. It is you. You are the one who kept you safe. You are the one who survived every difficult night, every cold moment of rejection, and every overwhelming storm. You are the parent, the protector, and the friend you always needed. Coming home to yourself does not happen in a single dramatic moment. It happens in the tiny, almost invisible choices you make every single day. It is choosing to rest when you are exhausted instead of pushing through one more task. It is pausing before you answer a demanding request, giving yourself the space to feel whether your body is saying yes or no. It is the moment you make a simple mistake, and instead of calling yourself foolish, you take a slow breath and say, "It is okay. We can try again." These moments might seem small, but they are the bricks you are using to build a completely new foundation. You are proving to that young, waiting part of you that you are reliable. You are showing them that you will not walk away when things get difficult, and that your love does not have a price tag. You are teaching your own nervous system that it is finally safe to let its guard down, to rest, and to simply exist without having to earn its place in the world. As we bring this reflection to a close, I want us to create a quiet, shared space of healing together. Before you close this screen, or move on to the next part of your day, take one more deep, grounding breath. Let the weight of the day settle, and let yourself feel the warmth of your own presence. To seal this commitment to your own healing, I invite you to leave an affirmation in the comments below. Write down something that your inner child has been waiting to hear for a very long time. It could be, "I am worthy of my own warmth. I am safe to rest." Or simply, "I am holding myself with love today." By writing it down, you are not just typing words on a screen. You are claiming your own narrative. You are speaking your truth into the world and letting your inner self know that you are finally listening. Let your words be a beacon for someone else who might be standing in the dark, reminding them that they are not alone on this path. Thank you for having the courage to sit with yourself today. Thank you for being willing to look at the painful places and meet them with compassion instead of criticism. As you step back into the rhythm of your life, carry this softness with you. When the world feels loud and the old patterns try to pull you back into the storm, remember that you always have a quiet sanctuary inside.